Yeah, there isn't much room.
All right. Good morning. Oh, my, that's welcome to another Sunday morning edition of Adult Bible Study here at Southfield Bible Church. I'm John McMath. We've been working our way painfully, slowly, and at great expense through the book of Joshua. That looks now like Bill won't take over next week. We'll keep everybody informed, so I'll just be here for a while. I'm so far down the line of command that by the time the orders get to me, they've already been done. It's I don't get anything. This has been quite a week in the news, hasn't it? Between the war in Iran and the Supreme Court and the peace is breaking out in Africa. Who knew that Rwanda and Uganda or the Congo, those guys have been at war for 30 years. Quite a lot of missionaries have been moved all over the place and some killed in that. And now we've got peace there. All kinds of remarkable stuff. I always wonder, how does all of this fit into biblical prophecy? And frankly, we won't know until it's all done. And by the time the theologians get around to analyzing what that was, what happened, and whether or not it fits into prophecy, it'll be another century. But here we are. We'll work through some strategic thoughts about the invasion of the Holy Land by Joshua. I'm just going to walk you through some of that. I'm going to take us today through a whole bunch of old rock piles and explain to you why some of these rock piles actually make a difference. And that's what it's going to look like for today. So we'll just get used to that. Let's pray, and we'll jump into Joshua at about chapter 7. We'll move quickly through it. Father, thank you for the privilege we have of studying together. We thank you for your word, for your faithfulness. We believe all that you have written. We trust you to reveal nothing but the truth. Thank you, Father, for our time now. We pray your blessing on this fellowship, on our time together. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, last time we took a look at the Battle of Ai. And I mentioned that that's a classic infantry tactic. When the kids go off to Marine basic officer training, they look at that in a sandbox and do it. And the honest professors will tell their students that this is in fact first recorded as an infantry tactic in the Old Testament. The idea of faking a retreat and bringing an ambush in to destroy the defenders of a fortified position. It's been done forever, probably. This is the first time in the Bible, first time anywhere that we see that. Achan sin, we talked about last time, location of Ai and Bethel. By the way, we've got some notes on the map. I'm going to use the map a bit today, more than I have, because we see Jericho. Here's Jericho. This is not to scale. It's not even close. And you'll notice I've got east at the top. People wonder why do professors always put east at the top when we've got Israel on this thing? And it's really, really simple because the blackboard usually fits better that way. But seriously, in the ancient world, in the Mideast, east was almost always at the top of a map because that's where the sun comes up. So the sun comes up, that's got to be the top of the world. They didn't know. And it just happens that also fits best on a blackboard. So What have I got there? The gate of the city. And that one is working, but that projector is. That's all right.
Your mic box.
Your black box?
Yeah, back here. I think the battery's gone.
I'm assuming you were catching all of this on the telephone. Okay.
Everybody awake now?
Does anybody else love modern technology as much as I do? Yeah. Okay. I was hoping I wasn't the only one. Did I show this particular image last time? I may not have. I probably did. You know, might have gone quickly. We're talking about the gates of the cities and the walls and so on. That's actually north. It's in Dan. The Cyclops walls, Babylonian ruins, Valley of Glory, destruction of Ai, Iron Javelin, burning of Ai, plunder permanent, keep up ruins. By the way, this is Shechem. And you'll see Gerizim on the left and Ebal on the right. You can always remember it because Ebal is the bald mountain. It just doesn't have anything on it. Adam Zertel is the character who excavated there, who did this drawing, or his people did this drawing. And he places it in the wrong zone, and he does all kinds of interesting stuff, but it is probably an altar built on the site of Joshua's original altar. It might even be the same exact location and shape, but we can't say that. Anyway, that's an interesting thing, and there we go. On to Gibeon. So beginning in chapter 9, we're going to be looking at Gibeon. Now, what is going on here? Where did I put my... If my head wasn't bolted on nice and tight, I think I would have a problem with it. The invasion takes a fairly predictable route. The crossing of the Jordan is a harder way to come into the land than a southern route. Moses had originally planned a southern route coming up through Beersheba, Hebron, Jerusalem, just taking the central highlands one at a time and then working down onto the major trade route. And that probably would have been fairly easy 40 years earlier. This route is the one that God chose for Joshua. And I think part of the reason for that is because of the crossing of the Jordan. This was to give this new generation their own, if you will, baptismal experience, their own miraculous crossing and an arrival on the other side in a new life. So I think that's why. But at any rate, they come in right in the middle, and the first battle is here at Jericho. And you'll notice when you read the story, the Battle of Jericho is almost entirely miraculous. Joshua doesn't use any of the standard siege tactics. Comes at the wrong time of year. He doesn't build up ramps and siege engines and battering rams, all the rest of it. He just marches around for 6 days, and the seventh day everybody blows trumpet, or the priests blow trumpets, and down come the walls. I've often wondered if the next time the church has a building program, if we could do roughly the same thing. and everybody gets shofars, and instead of blowing once on the seventh day, we all suck. I've never put that to a test, but I think that. Okay, from Jericho, the battle goes up to Ai, and at Ai, we see almost entirely a traditional military campaign. The first attack resulted in a loss. They took casualties and had to retreat. No miracle. There was judgment to be had. And by the way, in the judgment of Achan, that term, consecrate yourselves, that we saw in chapter 3. Consecrate yourselves, tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things in your midst. That same term is used in preparation for the judgment of Achan. He told the people, consecrate yourselves, get ready for this. God is going to do a terrible act of judgment in your midst. So it comes either way. But at Ai, we get a very, well, literally textbook, non-miraculous battle plan. Why is that? There's something going on in the Old Testament particularly, but I would say in the whole Bible, and I think it's a fairly important point, what I call the economy of miracles. God rarely uses a miracle to accomplish a task that he's trying to do when the textbook normal stuff will work just fine if executed by faithful men. Okay? So God normally doesn't do a miracle to solve our problems. He normally expects us to operate faithfully. Learn the principles, practice them faithfully, rinse and repeat. You do that monotonously over a lifetime and it will work just fine. And people discover that usually the hard way. When people violate God's principles, their lives usually end up a mess. And many of us have learned that ourselves the hard way. So what Joshua was doing at Ai was not miraculous. It was mere obedience to God, mere faithfulness, routine faithfulness. And there's a whole lot to be done there. So from Ai, we also know that Bethel was taken. It was not destroyed. Jericho and Ai were destroyed. The movement then comes on to Gibeon, which is an interesting place. The Gibeonites were a part of a 4-city coalition that we call the Hivite coalition. The Hivites were probably an Indo-European people. They were most likely related to the Hurrians of the Mitanni fame. And how they got here, we don't know. There appear to be a really, really ancient people group called Jebusites who lived in the area. Were they related? Probably not, but that was at Jericho. The Hivites had these 4 cities on the Ajalon Valley route that formed a block just north of Jerusalem. Their characteristic, all 4 of those little cities, is that they are unwalled. Gibeon, in particular, never had a wall. What it did have was huge cisterns for water. They had a supply of water. They also had a huge supply, again, gigantic vats, for olive oil. Now, olives grow in the central hill country, especially just north of Jerusalem, called Central Benjamin Plateau area. And it's high, it's kind of rocky, it's not much good for agriculture, but the olive trees just love it. So they grow and they get big, and you go out and get these olives and mash them into oil. And that's a very valuable commodity in the ancient East. So between the oil and the water supply, the Gibeonites had things to trade, and they ended up being go-betweens. So two enemies could trade to one another through the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites and their related people groups seem to have preferred to deal rather than to fight. They were always looking to make a deal. I get the impression that Donald Trump would have loved these guys. So, you want something, I want something, let's make a deal. We can both win. We'll all be happy. Sometimes that doesn't work. It's always nice when it does, but sometimes it doesn't work. The Gibeonites tried to make a deal, and they did it the wrong way. They lied. They dressed themselves up looking like they'd been on a caravan for 1,000 miles or so. Their camels are looking tired, and the old wine skins are leaking, and their food is all moldy, and their sandals are worn. They come tromping into Joshua's camp and said, "We're from a long way away, and we just moved in. I hear that you're taking over the place. Let's make a deal. We'll be allies forever." And Joshua and his people noticeably didn't talk to God about this, but then that's not always what you do. They looked at this and they made a quick decision that it would be better to make an alliance than to fight these particular people. Only afterwards, the very next day, they discovered that the city of Gibeon was right over there. From the spot where they made the deal, somebody could have tossed a potsherd, if he had a good arm, and hit Gibeon. It was right there. And people were angry at Joshua, and Joshua was trying to figure it out, but he had made a deal, and he would abide by the deal. Now, that makes Gibeon the key to a whole bunch of other stuff. So we've got an alliance that goes off to the southwest. So there is going to be Gezer, Lachish, Eglon, Hebron, and back up to Jerusalem. So these places, Gezer was a big deal, Lachish was a big deal, Eglon we still don't know about, but they all fit in a kind of an oval shape. If we think of this first complex in Jericho High and on Gibeon as the initiating campaign, we'll call it the central campaign. You're driving a wedge right through the middle of Israel, just thump, all the way to there, still in the hill country. From that point, the second campaign takes us all the way around the south. So, Gezer, I'm going to show you some pictures of all of these, but at Gibeon, Joshua is confronted by an alliance of these southern cities, and there may have been some others involved, but this is the group that's mentioned. And they formed up for battle, and they attacked Joshua. So Joshua fought in the hill country near Gibeon. And the Canaanite coalition began to run. And 1815, took a little trip down the Mississippi, along with Colonel Jackson, And so the Gibeonites or the Canaanites began to run it. And we began to chase them. And that's what is going on through here. Let's see if I can show you. Oh no, it's going to take a second. I guess I need to make a geography note. Oh, do I want to do that? Well, I'm going to tell you two things. Okay, three things. If you start at the Jordan River, let's see, which direction do I want this to be? I'm going to be this way. So if you start at the Jordan River in the east, you'll find that it's a low spot. At the Dead Sea, it's 1,200 feet below sea level. And it gradually gets higher until you're at 600 feet below sea level at the Sea of Galilee. From there, you go rapidly up to 2,500 feet for the peak of the Judean hills at Jerusalem. From Jerusalem, you come again rapidly down to about 500 feet above sea level, and you get this jumbled country that slowly softens out, and we call that the Shpela. Some people say Shephelah, and that's okay. It's not correct, but it's okay. It's easier to pronounce. So Shpela is the way the modern Israelis speak of this area. And that's a really nice cropland. That Shpela levels out into the coastal plain. And the coastal plain is all the flatland. Tel Aviv, the other coastal cities of modern Israel, Joppa, obviously, Caesarea, those cities are all down along the coast. In biblical times, the coastal plain ended in a series of sand dunes at the coast. And the sand dunes had a tendency to cut off rivers that were coming from the central hill country. So rivers would come down and they'd spread out and turn into swamps along the coast. And throughout all of antiquity, the coast of Israel was a malarial plain because of the swamps. It was not, literally not, until the end of the 19th century that Jewish settlers in that area began to drain the swamps. And they did some spectacular stuff. Eucalyptus trees, for example, drink an awful lot of water. And so if you plant thousands of eucalyptus trees, the water table will go down. Who knew? But that's what they did. So they bought Tel Aviv, the site of Tel Aviv, just south of Joppa. They bought that from the Turkish landholders. And the Turkish landlords thought they were getting this spectacular deal because they charged a phenomenally high price and the Jews were willing to pay it. And they bought the land that Tel Aviv would sit on and began to drain the swamp. And nobody had ever seen anything like this before. Nobody had ever heard of this before. And the Arabs in the area all came to work in the area so they could get good jobs draining the swamp. And the swamp drained and started building a modern nation. That's one of the places it started. At any rate, that's in antiquity. That's a reason that the international trade route, what they call the Via Maris, only comes down to the actual Mediterranean at Joppa. The rest of the time, it's another 5, 6, 7 miles inland. I'm not going to draw that on this particular map. There's just not room for it. And the major cities, Eglon, Lachish, Gezer, and others heading north, to Megiddo and elsewhere. The major cities are all about 15 to 20 miles inland, because that gets them up into the Shpela, into the nice agricultural land, and away from the swamps, away from the mosquitoes. And that was a big deal. So you've got these 4 zones: the Jordan River, Judean hills, Shpela, plains. And the central hills are made of limestone. The geologists say this is a truly ancient limestone known as the Cenomanian. And I don't particularly hold to any of their dates. That's a different lecture altogether. And I'm not going to go there. But I would say without too much hesitation that the Cenomanian limestone was not laid down 3.5 billion years ago during whatever. It didn't happen that way. But the Cenomanian limestone is a pretty hard stuff, and it tends to produce steep, jagged hills. It tends to not produce a lot of soil. It tends to wash down those V-shaped valleys, and out they go. A little farther north, up into the Ephraim country, just to the north, up near Shechem, that particular limestone is softened some by some chalky areas, and we get some U-shaped valleys. But in the south, around Judah, the valleys tend to be very steep, with a whole bunch of rocks in the bottom, and a creek that comes through often enough to scare people. And what that leaves on the hillsides, let me get this down out of here. What this leaves on the hillsides in much of central Israel is these great big rocks. And if you wander around and you're looking for stuff, what you're going to find is all this limestone, big old chunks of rock, nasty stuff. As we move out toward the Shpela, the limestone is different. And it's an Eocene limestone, the geologists tell us, which means it's a much more recent limestone, on the order of, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. Most of this is the result of the biblical flood, but that's a whole other story. Don't get me into it. I'm already into it, but I'm getting back out now. So this is left there, and you get down into Shpela, and it's a much more moderate landscape because there's so much chalk. The Eocene limestone has layers of limestone with much larger layers of chalk, which makes for a really interesting landscape. Among other things, caves happen. Lots of caves. Thousands of caves. For all I know, millions of caves. If you're ever in Israel and you're on a tour bus and the guide with his microphone points out a cave that's visible from the freeway and says, that cave right there is the very cave of Adullam, where David trained his mighty men. Just chalk that up to a first-year lie. I guarantee the guide doesn't know. Nobody knows. When you've got 10,000 caves and they all look exactly alike and every one of them fits the description perfectly, how do you pick? Well, you don't. Unless you happen to find an inscription there, a Kilroy-looking character with David was here. But we don't. So we don't know. And in the story of the chasing of the Canaanites away from Gibeon after that battle, we're going to see the kings of the Canaanites captured in a cave. And everybody wants to know, where is the cave? The correct answer, not the answer we all want, but the correct answer is, we don't know, we'll never know. It's somewhere on that route, so that narrows it down to probably 10,000 candidates. And maybe we can narrow it even better to a couple of hundred candidates. And that's as good as we're going to get. Anyway, so all of that is going to happen, and this, the geography, the Battle of Gibeon, there it goes. Oh yeah, Adonai-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem. I should probably say something about him, because he was in on this. Adonai-Zedek is mentioned in this. He's going to be killed in this, but the city of Jerusalem was not taken by Joshua, which is interesting. That Mount Zion area, the western part of the old city of Jerusalem, was probably taken, but the fortress on the Temple Mount and heading south of there into the Kidron Valley, Hinnom Valley Peninsula was not taken. That waited for David 400 years later. So Adonai-Zedek is an interesting character. We know him from the Amarna letters. So he's one of the kings mentioned in the Amarna letters, and he's mentioned again here in the Bible. Well, how about that? How interesting. Doesn't that mean that we can date all of these things? Well, if you read the scholars, you'll hear that the dating is very complex, and this is the scholars disagree to a great extent about this because it doesn't fit the acceptable dates for these events. Okay? In other words, if you follow the biblical dates and you see the fall of Israel to, or the fall of the Holy Land to Israel as about 1400 BC, up to about then it doesn't fit the late date at all to have Adonai-Zedek, the king of Jerusalem during the Amarna period, get in trouble here. It doesn't work. Okay, how could he be mentioned? Now, it's entirely possible that there were several Adonai-Zedeks. The name means the king of righteousness, or the lord of righteousness, master of righteousness, which he probably wasn't, but politicians have a tendency to name themselves so that it sounds good. So there might have been several. Nevertheless, we know him there, and Adonai-Zedek is in a big fight with Labayu, the king of Shechem, in the Amarna letters. And the king of Shechem, says Adonai-Zedek, has actually become a Habiru. Oh, how awful. He's gone and joined the Habiru. This is like this terrible thing, like you've gone off and become a Mennonite or something. It's a really unacceptable behavior. And Adonai-Zedek demands at least 6 soldiers to come with their chariots and wipe out Labayu. This is all kind of fun stuff in many ways. Anyway, Adonai-Zedek is mentioned here.
John?
This thing on the right, by the way, is one of the Amarna letters. Yes?
Are the people that you deal with or have dealt with your archaeology buddies when you go on these things? They are some of them Christian? Do they believe in the Bible and all this kind of stuff? I mean, how do you handle all that?
A lot of people get interested in archaeology who are not Christian. Yeah, definitely. The best archaeologists in Israel are Jews, at least culturally. So the archaeologist I worked with closely at Lachish was a man named David Usishkin. And I absolutely love the guy, have enormous respect for him. But he's Jewish and has accepted most of the critical theories because that's what the secular academic system has pushed for, I don't know, 200 years now. But he's a very, very good guy, very honest. And What he says is always the point. It says you dig carefully, you take really good records, you present your results with integrity. And the end users of archaeology may be highway engineers or secular, atheistic college professors or Christians reading their Bible. And they're going to use the finished, honest products of archaeology in different ways. So Usishkin I really, really like a lot. Adam Zertal is a bit like that. He uses the Bible as another reference. He would say, "See also," this reference in the Bible. There are others who are blatantly anti-Christian in their viewpoints. They will interpret materials in such a way as to make it very, very confusing. I wish they wouldn't do that. What usually happens, and this is where we get around it, when archaeologists who are the heads of expeditions and have a lot of money given to them, when they finally publish a final report, it's going to be several volumes long and have lots and lots and lots of technical details, photographs, drawings, sections, plans, and very objective statements about how this was found and where it was found and exactly what the context was. And there's a lot of cross-checking that happens at that point. In the final result publication, you can usually find the truth. When these same archaeologists are trying to pay the bills, they'll often make a contract with a bookseller, with a publisher, to publish a slick, full-color, photographic introduction to whatever it is, the late great biblical story of Jericho or Lachish or Hatzor or wherever, Megiddo. And a lot of those are spun for the leftist slant. So I learned the hard way. You never, ever read the published for a big profit books that they put out, unless you just want the pictures. And I'll admit, sometimes I just want the pictures. But you don't believe anything they say. Some of them may be true, but you don't take that for granted. And I've learned that in very much the same way. The secular archaeologist will virtually never do an honest read of a Christian take on the material. Their reviews are always 100% negative, no matter what, doesn't matter. So there is a divide there, and we find in field operations, when you're actually out in the field digging, there's some tension. It's mostly at the higher levels. So it's possible as a Christian with the right credentials to volunteer as a section head or a supervisor or that kind of pottery reader, that sort of thing. It's definitely possible to do that. It's possible also for our serious Christians to head up a complete excavation, but it takes money. It's a very, very expensive project, and an individual can't do it. I couldn't say, well, I'm going to do an excavation. I could never fund the bond, for example. You've got to put up $1 million in bond. There's all the other stuff that's going on. So an individual can't do it, but a big organization can. So, for example, the University of Chicago for many years has a Near Eastern archaeology department. And their excavations are often really, really well done. University of Chicago has Christian roots, but the department is definitely not Christian. But their museum back in Chicago is really, really excellent, some outstanding stuff. And the final reports published by University of Chicago are things to which you must always pay attention. It's very good stuff. The popular level stuff usually isn't. And unfortunately, most of what we have access to is the popular level stuff. If you don't have access to a university-sized library, it's hard to get the final reports. And the archaeologists know that. The secular archaeologists, they know that. And so they wait 10 years, 15 years to publish the final report. 50 years. Some things never come out. But the popular blurb in the newspaper, dig confirms Jesus was buried in Caesarea. Oh, wow, who knew? And then, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, the royal cities. The book of Joshua mentions royal cities a lot. This is a royal city. Which one is this? Oh my goodness! It's on the Mediterranean, south of Caesarea. I don't remember which one this is. One of the few built right on the. This is Dor, D-O-R. That's right on the Mediterranean coast. Most of the stuff that you see today is from the Roman period, but it goes all the way back into biblical times. It's one of the northern coalition cities, but that doesn't matter. What's interesting about this is it's a royal city. What makes a royal city? Well, usually during the Canaanite period, the royal city was a city that had a king. Okay, that's all it means. So the king lives there. That makes it a royal city. And he stands up on his parapet and says, I am master of all I survey, from that oak tree just beyond that stop sign all the way over to the gas station there on 2nd Avenue. It's all mine. From the sea until the edge of the hills, 200 yards that way. I and my army of 3 guys control all of them. So there were a lot of royal cities. Royal cities tended to be built on mounds because over the years they would pile up. They'd be in the same spot. That was a good place for a city, and so it turned into a bigger than usual city. Most of the people living in the area of a king lived in small villages and individual houses out on the farmland. So you've got a bunch of farming land, enough to support the non-farming residents of the royal city. So the king and his court, his judges, his priests, the others who don't produce anything, end up getting their support from the surrounding lands. And the surrounding people were essentially the servants or slaves of the king, whoever the king was. And this was a system, and as I've said before, there were about 130 miniature kingdoms in this area. Sometimes there'd be a coalition of 3 or 4 cities. And sometimes a variety of different kings would get together for a thing. So this southern battle, these kings got together in their royal cities, and they all decided to fight against Joshua. That's all that means. Hebron, Yarmut, Lachish. Yarmut, that's the one I left out. Well, it doesn't matter. Hebron, Yarmut, Lachish, Eglon, along with Gezer. This is Hebron. The left is Herod's monument over the tomb of the patriarchs. That definitely is in Hebron. People wonder, well, why is Hebron so important to the Jewish people? They want to live there, they want to move there, and it's a difficult place to live because the Arabs who live there really don't like the Jews, and so that the military is always on alert in Hebron. It's a rough place, a tough neighborhood. But the reason for that is that, well, one, the cave at Machpelah and the surrounding acreage is the only real estate that Abraham ever purchased in the Holy Land. That was it. Abraham wandered all up and down the Central Hill Country, but he only owns this one little piece of land, and that's where he buried Sarah. Later on, Abraham was buried there, so the same with Isaac and Rebekah, and later on, Jacob and his wives and other ladies, for the most part, buried there. Rachel was buried farther north at Bethlehem, but everybody else was there. Later on, Jacob, with his death in Israel or in Egypt, was brought back and buried at Hebron. Significantly, Joseph was buried near Shechem. All right, all of that. Hebron, Jarmuth, okay. So these cities formed a coalition, and everything can be located. This is, which one is this? This is, that's Gezer on the right. So Hebron and Gezer, I've only got two pictures in this one, it doesn't matter. But the important thing to understand is that these places can be identified. Now Gezer is obvious. We know from the Bible it should be at the spot where the Ajalon Valley intersects the coastal plain. We know it should be a defensive location. We know it should be very close to the main international trade route. From Egyptian annals, we know that Gezer is on a line of march that would take an Egyptian pharaoh from Egypt through Gaza, through Ashkelon, Ashdod, finally to Joppa, then up past Gezer, and on north to Megiddo, to Hatzor, and so on. So we know where it fits in the line. Okay? We know the same thing from the Hittite sources, going in the other direction. From Megiddo, you come south, and eventually you come to Gezer, a good place to spend the night. From there, you can go on down the line. From these variety of different sources, it's obvious that Gezer is what it is. And when we go to Gezer, we find a major royal city going back to Canaanite times that continued as a major royal city on into Israelite times. And the stuff that's left there is obviously a big deal. So this is the place. Yarmut is probably a place today called, strangely enough, Tel Yarmut. That one also is the right place. Lachish has been identified for many years with the Tel that today we call Tel Lachish. But it had another name for a long time, and today everybody is agreed. Places where excavation has actually been done are generally identifiable. It's been done. Eglon, on the other hand, has not been clearly identified. We know that it has to be on the line of march from Lachish to Hebron. So it's somewhere probably in the hill country, probably south of Lachish, probably not south of Hebron, because you get into the desert. But there's several places down there. William Albright decided that a place called Tel Bet Mirsum would be a good catch for Eglon. And he excavated there for like 10 seasons and laid down in his excavation at Tel Bet Mirsum the fundamental principles for modern archaeological excavation. You draw a square, you align everything with the north-south lines, you lay everything out with a transect, You leave bulks between the squares so you can see the detection lines. You dig slowly through each line, identifying each individual locus. All of the principles that every archaeologist is now all over the world, whether they're studying Incas or indigenous Thai ruins or whatever, everybody uses the same methods today because it works. It's absolutely the best way to do it. And Albright did that, and the publication of Tel Bet Mirsum went to 12 volumes. It's a huge thing. Libraries could afford that back in the day. I don't. I've only seen it once, and I was looking for something, but I don't think Eglon is to be identified with Tel Bet Mirsum. I don't think that works, and it doesn't matter what. Actually, we've got what, 4 of the 5. We've got clear identifications. We're missing one on the line of march that we would like to have a better identification for. Wow, that's a tiny thing. You're going to throw out the resurrection and the creation narrative because we can't identify Eglon? I don't think so. This is not undermining the biblical history. Anyway, enough of that. The road to Bet Horon. Okay, I want you to look at this. As people wonder, well, how could you possibly know where the Canaanites ran when they ran away from Gibeon? When you're at Gibeon, you're essentially up on the central plateau, and off either side, the landscape drops precariously with lots and lots of rocks and very steep V-shaped valleys cutting it. This is what you look at on the west side of Israel's central hill country. That's what you see. I'm standing on the road where I take this picture, and you can just see a little bit of road up in the right corner here. Where is the thing? Yes, I am told that I can do this. Which one is it? Ooh, oh, yeah. Right up there is the road cut. We're going to come right through. Where do you touch it? Right through there. Then you see this little bit here, and it's going to go up and over the top of that. And then down the other side, it's going to come up over there. That's a terrible road. But it's absolutely the best place to put a road. When the Romans got to this part of the world, they were wondering, well, we're going to need a road through here. What has always been here? Well, they looked at the chariot track that was already there, and they said, this is the best place to put the road. And so the Roman road was put right there. When the British got there, they said to themselves, this old Roman road is getting kind of worn. We should really try to put down some I think they were using macadam in those days, so asphalt and gravel, and they were just trying to make a smoother road so that the trucks could go on it. They put it in exactly the same spot. The modern road that goes past Gibeon at the Jerusalem airport, heading down toward Tel Aviv, before the modern freeway was built, went precisely in the same track. Now, if you're Canaanites and you're trying to get out of Dodge in a hurry, and you've got this road about maybe 8 feet wide enough for a chariot to drive slowly on, and you're trying to get out of Dodge, you're trying to make serious tracks for points west, and the bad guys are at your back, throwing sling stones and arrows coming down, and the occasional guy swinging a sword or an axe. That's the way you go. You go the quickest way there was. That goes right smack past Gezer, Gezer. And at the end of this, as this goes down, the battle is going to take place somewhere around Gezer. Gezer was not destroyed. Matter of fact, Gezer was bypassed. Its king came out and tried to join in the battle and ended up being defeated. And they ran all the way. This is where the story of the miraculous long day comes in. Was it a long day? Yeah, I'm not sure it was. I do believe it was. It didn't just seem long. It was probably an actual geological event, and it would have required a miracle. The real miracle, God could stop the earth in its tracks if he wanted to. The real miracle would be in avoiding the problems of a loss of centripetal and centrifugal force without providing some way of stopping the stuff that was moving. I don't know if you've ever been on a horse who decided to stop suddenly. Okay, I see some of you laughing because you remember that event with not exactly fondness. When I was at a YMCA camp many moons ago, these many decades ago, and the girl who was running the horse part of the camp, I guess didn't like me. I've never figured that out. I was not particularly good at talking to girls in those days, and so I never figured out why she didn't like me. But I needed to go over and I said, I need a horse. She said, sure, I'll get you a horse. I think she knew that I had never been closer than maybe 100 yards from a horse before in my life. And she put me on a horse named Red, sometimes called Big Red. And he was about like so. I don't know how many hands that works out to. It was more than I've got. I was a tall horse. Getting up into that saddle was quite the project, and he was just vibrating there. And I got on him. I grabbed a hold of the reins, and I gave him a little tap on the side, and he took off. He took off like a rocket. And I thought I grabbed onto the saddle horn, and I grabbed onto the reins, pulling back, hollering, "Whoa, whoa!" And nothing was moving there. He went over a fence and headed up the road. Went about half a mile at an absolute full gallop. Found a white spot. Did a great, huge 180-degree turn, like a procedural turn if you guys have got airplanes. And a big teardrop and coming back, absolutely full gallop, came up to the barn where he knew his food was, found that the door was closed, and decided to stop at the last instant. All four. He's got four-corner braking and slid to a stop. He could stop because he had brakes. I didn't. And I went up and over the top, landed in the dirt there in front of the barn door, looking up at this horse, who then smiled down at me. Yeah, that's what happens. If something stops, if you're on something and it stops and you don't, you just keep going. The big miracle there was all these people, trying to stand on their own 2 feet, and the sun stood still for about a day. Well, how did they do that? Well, that required a miracle. That was the only miracle in the whole Southern campaign. The rest of it, Joshua just went and took all of these. Later on, we're going to find these cartouches. Not exactly. In chapter 15 of Joshua, we get a list of all the cities that were conquered. The king of Hebron, 1. The king of Eglon, 1. The king of Lachish, 1. The king of Gezer, 1. How many kings? Just that one. So the kings were defeated along with their armies. It doesn't mean, nor does it say, that the cities were burned. Okay, that's the Southern campaign. And I'd better stop there. We'll stop with this one. Where is the cave of Makkedah, where the kings of the Amorites were buried? We don't know. That's the correct answer. And the next person who tells you, we found the cave of Makkedah, sell it to the Marines. We don't want it here. It's not going to be, we don't believe you.
How did they get up there, John? How did they get in there and up there?
Oh, well, these particular caves are in the Judean wilderness near En-Gedi. So they didn't even try to get into those. These are 3 of the 10,000 or so possibilities.
They love
There's
your
caves
cliff.
everywhere.
Love your cliff, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Judean hills have a way of making sheer cliffs. There are kibbutzes in the Jordan Valley on the Israeli side who specialize in rock climbing expeditions. They'll take these 4-wheel drive gigantic buses out into the wilderness and take a bunch of tourists on rappelling and rock climbing on cliffs like this. Yeah, it's quite something. No, we don't know. The kings were killed, their bodies were thrown into a cave, and a large rock was rolled over the front. You know, I'm not going to talk about that. The idea of rolling a big rock in front of the tomb, which is, as you recall, exactly what happened with Jesus, is not unique to Jesus. That was done usually for sanitary reasons. There was no particular respect for the 5 dead kings. They were tossed in a cave, and a rock was rolled in front so that animals wouldn't drag things around and make a terrible smell. That was the point. Anyway, gotta quit. We'll be back next week, 4th of July weekend. If you've got a wonderful place to go and lie on a beach and drink lemonade, do that. I'm okay with that. I will be here doing yet another in the series of 5,000 slides from a moving tour bus. See you next time. Bye.
John, are you gonna do judges and then